letting ourselves fall into a comfortable seated posture. Nice and relaxed, very soft. With each exhalation through the mouth, allowing your body to soften, your mind to begin to release the momentum of the day. If you find yourself thinking about the past, something that had happened, then you simply notice that that's a clenching of the mind, an agitation in your mind. And so you soften, you lose interest in it, you relax back to the present moment. If you notice your mind projecting into the future, imagining what will happen, what you think should happen, some fantasy about something or other, notice that you're doing it. That takes a lot of energy to try to recreate and to generate a whole new world. Look at it and notice that it's not as interesting as what's actually happening. Relax, come back to the present moment. If you try to fight your mind, your brain gets the message, oh, this must be a really important thing. I will come back to this more often. And that's how that compulsive loop can happen. So instead, we look at what's not happening and we give an internal shrug. It's not interesting. Just come back. Doesn't matter. Come back. letting yourself release through your posture to the chair or to the floor, however you're sitting or standing. Just another minute of letting go. With each exhalation, you soften further, settling into a healthy practice space. I had to move it so I could see the clock. That's why.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It doesn't
I
matter.
need to be more in the light or something.
No, it's all right.
Can you see it all right?
It's okay. I should lower it down. That way I'd be able to see over it.
I would try lowering it, but
No, it's fine. It doesn't matter.
How it works.
It's better to look at you. Mel is particularly bright and shiny this morning. Even on a cloudy day, she brings the sunshine.
Oh my gosh.
Welcome, Del.
Hello.
So nice to have so many nice people here. Warmth and life into your hands. Make them feel vibrant and alive as best you can. Notice that you can move your hands in a way that causes them to become tense and obstructed, and it makes it difficult to feel them comfortably. And notice that you can move in a way that brings them softness and warmth and a kind of life. So if you had to go play an instrument or play the piano or do sign language or something with your hands, maybe type quickly on a keyboard, there's a way you could prepare them to help them feel soft and prepared, alive and vibrant. And you want to have that kind of quality coming into your hands. More life, more awareness. Using the method of softness. And then remember that most of these are 36 in both directions, although some we've been slowly increasing the number. But you want it to be 36 repetitions of presence and wakefulness and liveliness at this point. And so if you notice that you're doing repetitions and your mind wanders away and you come back 2 minutes later and you're still rubbing a spot, that might not be giving you the change that you're looking for. And so you can go back and do it again, this time with more presence, so that you're not sort of skimming over. And one of the common problems that happens is that it sometimes takes a while for people to settle into their body, into their practice. And so maybe the lower half of their practice is better than the top half because they were only partially here for this half. It's the reason why we sit and we try to slow down before we start, so that we're in that space. And so as you practice these, and you're doing these movements that are trying to wake up your body, please do stay present. Not forcefully present, but awake. Stay awake to what's going on. And if you notice that you are drifting away a lot, and maybe you weren't actually there for 90% of the movements in the practice, do extra, go back. Take some time to give it the attention that it needs, not just the physical pressure. It would be like raising a child and you're sort of physically there, but never mentally there. The kid would know. That relationship would not go well. You want to be fully there for your own experience. Do you have enough space over there?
Mhm.
Okay. We are on day 70.
Wow.
It's amazing.
8 days left. Oh my gosh.
1 month left.
That's really cool.
Yeah. For those of you that have been sticking with us through this 100-day transformation process, congratulations. Come very far. And for those of you joining us in the middle, that's okay too. Just put in the extra time afterward. And if you are just joining us for the first time, maybe you found us on the internet, you're not sure what we're doing, please do check down below the video for a link to an introductory lesson that will teach you how to do this practice that we're enjoying. And then you can come back here and enjoy us during each and every live session. You can always ask yourself, what sock will he wear next? I know that's all anybody tunes in for. That's right. Placing bets in Las Vegas. It's the source of my fortune. Warmth, liveliness to your hands. Remember, you could do that through tension and pushing really hard and your hands would get hot. And you can find out how to do it while being soft and present. And both bring warmth and liveliness to your hands. But one adds tension, one takes tension away. We have to use the right method to create the appropriate conditions, the causes and conditions within which change happens, the kind of change we want. You can make a cake with spoiled milk, but at the end, you end up with a cake that it may look nice, but you don't want to eat it. We have to use the right ingredients, one of which is softness and presence. Chris is noticing how difficult it is to meditate, and that presence quality. And one of the stories that ZhiCheng Shifu shared in class this morning, I was in class with him this morning, is that sharing an experience where he was trying to open a jar. The lid on the jar would not turn. And he was squeezing and huffing and puffing and sweating when he was younger. And he could not get the jar to open. And then a much smaller person comes by and says, oh, let me try that. And with no effort, they open the jar. And he realized that while he was opening the jar, he was pushing down really hard on the lid. He was squeezing the sides of the lid against the bottle. Everything was pressuring and making it that much more difficult to open. The force he was using to open it was actually keeping it closed. And then the other person came on and just applied only the force that was needed to open it, and the jar popped open. And I think that we do that oftentimes in our meditations, that we are trying really hard to be still and to slow down, but that effort itself that we're adding to this process is keeping us from feeling soft and still. ZhiCheng Shifu was a man of many metaphors.
This is very true. He had many puns.
Many puns. He'll call us and we'll be chatting, and just buried within every other sentence is some kind of pun. You have to listen very carefully. And again, just to support him, if you'd like, there are links to him down below as well. Even if you just send him a thank you note for sharing all of these methods that benefit us. Chris recently sent him a gift, and he uses it every single day. And so it's really nice when people down the line of training with him can appreciate his generosity. One of the biggest things that Master ZhiCheng struggles to connect and communicate to his students are these appropriate causes and conditions. How does he refer to it? The context. Mm-hmm. That we have to approach these things in the right way, or the technique either has no effect or it brings bad effects. Especially after working on the head and upper body, taking the time to really deeply settle and close. Don't allow any excess energy to be stuck up there. It can feel vibrant and warm and alive after waking it up. And then you allow all of your awareness to begin to settle downward. Your body softens. And you let your mind sink down. Even if you just feel the warmth from your palms soaking in, and that allows the awareness to also soak its way into that space in the middle. Remember that if you try to push your mind into your dantian, all that does is pull your chi up into your head. Find a way to let everything settle on its own. That's part of this context we're talking about. Things happening because we let go instead of things happening because we use force. this wonderful diagram here is the Neijing Tu, the internal classic. Jing it's also part of a way of describing your channels. It's this underlying quality of something. And then Tu is like a diagram. And it's a very sophisticated story about what happens in your body if you approach these principles correctly. It's a description in part of the cultivation of your dantian, as we're talking about what happens in your body-mind. It's a description of how qi is connected through the mind, through the body, through the breath, through the process of letting go, how we are one complete organism. The mind is not separate from the body. These different qualities of our nature, including the cultivation of wisdom and good health, they're all partially described in this sequence and image. And part of the reason that in these internal practices, we spend so much time cultivating these particular conditions and these certain skills like settling. Because as they advance, they follow through into something beautiful. You can see versions of this engraved in stone in certain Taoist monastic spaces, especially in China. But it is a common process that has been shared and taught around the world, especially in this Dragon's Gate system. Very beautiful. Mm-hmm. Big Dipper here. Softening the shoulders. That's so beautiful. Notice that my shirt matches the scroll. Ah.
Oh my. It really does. All the blues and purples and yellow.
It's supposed to be the image of a sunset, right? Fire and water. Although here, the fire ends up under the water. And for those of you that are interested in some of this process, it's also worth looking up something called the Luzu Baizubei, the Ancestor Lu's 100-character stele tablet. Thanks, Mel. It's funny because when I first came back to the States, I had been having a discussion about the things that I felt like inside were impossible. My friends and I in Costa Rica, we were talking about how it's so easy to just fall into these spheres of doing things you're good at, doing things you know, and being around people that agree with everything that you say. And it makes life easier if we are comfortable and everything is effortless. And so we were chatting about growth and what it might mean if instead of doing those things, because I was in this center of this healing retreat center, everyone, called me Dr. John. And I got to be like the local master guy. Felt impossible, or being a stand-up comedian for one person. Somebody else, it was, I can't remember. Maybe it was being an artist of some kind. And for me, it was carpentry felt impossible just because of how I was raised. Cooking felt impossibly difficult, likewise, because of the world I was raised in. And then I came back to the States, and I became an apprentice to a master carpenter, and I began to cook a lot of the days for the people on retreat here. And now I'm making cookbook.
He's an amazing chef.
my skill has improved somewhat in both of those things. And then I was chatting with Mel, and I realized, oh gosh, I guess those things aren't difficult anymore. And I thought about what would be the next difficult, completely outside of your realm of possibility. It was the next thing that I thought of. Because for me, it generally felt as though I didn't have any sense of or understanding of why people did the things they did. Fashion-wise, the choices people were making, it still feels very difficult. And so Melanie spent almost like a good year. We were talking about it pretty regularly. She was watching YouTube videos with me because Mel has a wonderful eye for color and fashion. So she's slowly been helping me. And now it's a bit easier, coming to think of it. And so your appreciation is noticed. It's all new for me. I wonder what the next impossible thing will be. I fully recommend that people, from moment to moment in your life, do something that feels impossible, genuinely difficult.
I guess what we're trying to do with the I Ching is
the I Ching feels that way.
Impossible.
Yeah, the I Ching feels insurmountable. Yeah.
Yeah, even John and I took a class for several years with a very knowledgeable instructor who helped us translate Tao Te Ching from the traditional Chinese language.
Who wants to help us with the I Ching translation?
Who wants to help us with the I Ching? But I remember I mentioned, I expressed an interest in translating I Ching, and he was like, it's impossible.
Yeah, he said that. Yeah, he said, don't even try.
Yeah, and this is somebody who really knows the language and the context, and so
this is what he does with his time. Yeah. He does this professionally. Yeah, so it'll be fun to try, because he's also always felt too intimidated to try.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that is a fun thing. And it is neat that over time, your system kind of learns that the feeling of something being impossible just means it's unknown, which starts to feel like a world of potential instead, because it's an entire untouched aspect of your life. So even if you only increased it 10%, that is a tremendous change in your life, as it has been for me with all of these different qualities.
Yeah, I remember hearing someone say, it's just a matter of figuring out what the next obvious thing is.
That's right. Next obvious thing.
Next obvious step in the sequence of learning.
Because it's always in front of you. You can always read that next thing. Dale's asking for explanation.
Oh, don't translate. Yeah, this was several years ago. I don't remember. He may not have said it that directly, but he definitely expressed a kind of difficulty.
Yeah, trepidation. He felt like it was like trying to translate the I Ching, and not trying to translate it into English, but trying to read the traditional Chinese and to understand it, because you have to take so much time to understand this deep context. Again, it was the same thing that my own Shifu said, wait on that. Go and read and memorize the Tao Te Ching. Go read these other Taoist texts first, then go back to the I Ching. And so now that it's been 6 or 7 years of translating and retranslating the Tao Te Ching, memorizing all of these various Taoist texts and contexts, the I Ching by its nature is the most sophisticated thing in the world. That's what it strives to be. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the reasons it feels like a mountain.
Yeah.
Mount Everest would be way easier to train for than this.
Well, especially when you consider that, like, there have been so many highly intelligent people over time who've tried translating this book and like really immersing themselves, not just in the language, but in the culture,
That's
and the
right.
history, and the divination, and all of this stuff, and their translations are so wildly different from one another.
They are, yeah. And then you look at the original Chinese and you're like, that's not in there at all. Why did they put that in there? And it's because to help them feel like they understand it more, or because they feel like it's an important context to put in there.
Oh yeah, Del, episode 2 is already out. He was just asking about the podcast.
Oh, yeah, it's funny. It's been the most requested thing I've ever done is chatting with Melanie.
Yeah, episode 2 is out, and now we're trying to figure out what we want to talk about in episode
3.
three.
We've been chatting about how to break it down, because it is very much like, okay, we're going to learn this new language, but it would be like just wading into reading texts without breaking down the language first. And so I think what we're going to do is do whole episodes just examining and chatting with each other about the nature of yin and yang, which is the most basic line and broken line in the I Ching. And then we'll go from there into the mixtures of the two and try to understand what it means, not just as some vague concept, but really grokking it, really deeply understanding why they're using these shapes and what they mean when they come to it in the discussion. And so we're not just reading other people's words about it, but that we're building our understanding from the ground up.
Yeah, and Del asked if we can talk about using the I Ching to read the future. Do you have anything you want to say about that?
Go for it.
John and I talk a little bit about that particular use of I Ching in episode 2, and maybe we will kind of expand on that.
Yeah, we were talking about it again recently in the car.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Mel saying, stay tuned. We try not to talk about these things too much outside of the podcast because we want to be chatting about them live. I think that's part of what people seem to enjoy, is just us talking about these things and working through them. And so we're going to try to do that. It's been interesting because part of what I really want to represent in all of the videos and things that I do, like on Patreon, for instance, the videos of me practicing the Guqin or studying or doing these things, is I don't want to be part of that movement where people only ever show the moment of success, or when things are really going well, or that quality that people do. People try to fake what it looks like to train or what it looks like to learn something. It's always just these highlight moments, the Instagram world. And so what I'd really like to do instead is to demonstrate what real training, what real study looks like when you're doing it from this correct context of just being soft and relaxed and consistent. Same reason I like doing these live 100-day sequences. Like, let's work together step by step. This is what it looks like to slowly gain skill, to slowly learn something. And the same with the I Ching. We don't want to pretend to be masters of anything. We want to show what it sounds like to learn. And maybe in years from now, we'll be considered some kind of expert in this or that thing. And people can track what it looks like to learn, without it just suddenly being, oh, this person's always really skilled. I got that compliment the other day with my carpentry. And it's really funny to me because the person was framing it in such like, oh, have you always been good at this kind of thing? Not understanding that it was literally the thing I was the worst at. I'm still just not good at those things. I have difficulty seeing it. I'm as far from being a natural as possible in those things. But people don't understand the process of acquiring skill. And so we're hoping to demonstrate that process, what it looks like, and how to approach it in a healthy way. That's my thought about it.
Yeah, I think we need more of those examples.
Mm-hmm. And that's why in conversation, I want to show us not knowing what we're doing, making mistakes, making corrections, coming back. Because that, as an example, that as a reference is, I think, more useful as a teaching mechanism than just showing the highlights, us showing how great we are, how much we know.
Yeah, John Green published a video, I'm going to say in the last year, where he revealed all the bloopers. Just in this particular video, all of the outtakes where he is like pausing or stumbling over his words and having to re-record and re-record.
That was wonderful.
And it was so wonderful to see, because it's like, this is a guy who's been, making YouTube videos for years. And I would have assumed that it was just this fluid process for him. No mistakes.
That's right.
He's just kind of got a flow going.
Because that's what editing makes it look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
It was very encouraging to see that.
Because it makes it possible for us to do those things. Because we look at a polished result and we think, oh my gosh, I could never do that. Yeah, and Hank Green also. These John and Hank Green people that we're talking about, YouTubers, they're the people that run these sock companies that are making these wonderful charities. They're part of it, at least. And Hank Green did something similar recently where he published 10 ideas that he was completely wrong about.
Oh, I still need to watch that one. Yeah.
It's just wonderful. And it's just the idea of, look, I'm considered the expert, and here's what I got totally wrong. Because that also is important, so that we can actually see what people look like.
Yeah, Del says transparency is key. So in the spirit of transparency, John spent probably more time editing my portion of the podcast than we spent all total just recording it.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Because of all my pauses and awkward moments, and like there were many times where I was like, I don't know if I'm not describing this the right way. I need to start over, and like just a tremendous amount of time he spent editing. Hoping to make it easier for him in the future. We'll see.
The point is that there was simply a lot of space between your brilliant thoughts, and so I just took the space out.
You're very kind. And very masterful at editing. Because I listened to it later and I was like, wow, I didn't sound anything like that at the time.
Continuing with each of these points until that sense of awareness soaks into the point. So we're going to work on the back. And in honor of today, because today we are continuing to talk about these channels that come along the torso. And the last of the 6 along the legs is the bladder channel. It runs up along the back of the leg from the little toe up through the middle of the knee, all the way up the center of the glute, up along the back. And the channel separates through the center of the muscle here that runs up along the back, but also along the outside of this muscle here, running all the way up over the top of the head from these channels that we work with our fingertips in the very beginning. And it comes all the way over, by the way, to this point here, inside the front of the eye, coming up here. So these points sometimes that we work in the very beginning are part of this bladder channel that travels all the way down to the little toe. So our whole body is united, top and bottom. It's really wonderful. And so I thought that we could do extra movements along this channel along the back. We've been slowly increasing them anyway. And on that paper that you would find down below, if you're curious of looking down in the doobly-doo, you can see the number of repetitions that's often recommended for each of these. And along the back, there are 100 repetitions. And so I thought today we could try 100 for each of these various directions, slow and comfortable. And if you need to take a break, feel free to do it. Do fewer. It's all okay. Use the backs of your hands if your shoulders are tired. But please make sure that you maintain all of these correct principles. You're soft, your posture is clear, your mind is quiet, and you're simply allowing the warmth and liveliness to soak into these channels in the back. Your awareness moving into that space between the skin and the muscles, just like usual, but don't let the increased number begin to make you feel tired. You could allow the warmth from your palms to soak into the lower back. Your awareness sinking in comfortably. And then if you need to take a break, of course, you can just let your arms hang comfortably. And then again, opening from side to side, helping to spread this tissue away from the spine and to warm that line just at the level of the navel on the back. Continuing to maintain a comfortable upright posture. Don't lean or arch. Just stay soft. Again, the warmth soaks into the lower back, nourishes and releases. Warming along the center line, nourishing the Mingmen in the back. But really this whole area here. So this is softening that point just on the outside and above the knee. Very end of the quadriceps muscles here on this side. And then spleen 10 is just a couple inches above the knee on this side of the quadriceps muscles. And you can allow your fingertips to dangle and warm the liver point that we worked on a few days ago. Yesterday, we talked about the gallbladder channel. We've talked about the liver, the stomach, the spleen, the kidney. All how they relate to the torso. And for those of you who are new, this 100-day series is also a teaching series, learning about the various channels and vessels and pathways in the body, just at the basic level. So it's worth reviewing each of the classes separately if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Let's spend some extra time here emphasizing that space just beneath the knee, between those two tendons and the fold of the knee, urinary bladder 40. Gently opening the back of the knee. Make sure that the tendons on either side are relatively soft as well, releasing the grip that we tend to have on our legs. There's a big Stellar's J watching me out this window. It's fierce mohawk, bright blue bling. In general, as we stimulate each of these points, we tend to stimulate the function of that point. But at the same time, by warming and being very nourishing on each of these channels, we are gently allowing qi to collect in these channels, especially if our awareness is sinking into that space, because this is one of the ways that we move qi around the body, is by moving our awareness and our intent. And so again, as long as we're using these correct principles that we're talking about, this quality of being gentle and kind, not pushing hard, not trying to force change, letting ourselves be relatively easy, centered and quiet, letting our breath be calm and our whole body be connected, all of these qualities, these are nourishing by their nature. And by allowing our awareness to bring those qualities into each of these spaces in our body, because we're touching our whole body in a lot of these important channels, the channels themselves, these areas themselves become nourished. So it doesn't matter where we're touching, this is a nourishing practice. And then specific points, for instance, stomach 36, or those points on the lower back, their tendency is to nourish the body, to strengthen the qi in the body. So you can begin to feel how this quality of awareness brings a kind of warmth and fullness wherever we put our mind. And so we carefully move it around, being gentle to allow our mind to soak into spaces without forcing it, so that we don't force our qi back up again. So here, as we nourish each of these points and our awareness soaks into the knees, this is very nourishing for the knees. Brings blood flow. Helps to calm and heal the tissues somewhat. Again, these are very small percentages. These are adding drops into a bucket, which is why we have to do it every day, every day, every day. And it's very easy to undo the progress that we're making by being aggressive and harmful to our body. So please be gentle and careful during this time. It's always easier to wreck something than it is to build it, as our whole society keeps finding out over and over again. This point here again on the back of the calf, in that space just in that bifurcation point. Bladder 57, part of the same very long channel. You can move your fingers around a bit to see if you can find other spaces that need a little bit of attention. Especially if these points that we're working on, after a while, they just feel calm and easy. And they become easy to maintain. It's always easier to maintain something once you've established it. Gentle and opening. And just for the sake of today's emphasis on the bladder channel, you can spend a little time working on that little toe. If you're very sensitive, maybe you can feel the other end of the channel up here on the eye that this point relates to. You'd be surprised that you can treat eye issues with this point. It is a thing that you can experience in the clinic.
I believe it.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. It's not my favorite eye point, but it is something that can happen. More of just a way of going, wow, all of this stuff really does relate.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Remember that your hands should be continuously softening through this set. So if you're noticing that perhaps you're adding tension to your hands, see if you can find a way to interact differently. Ooh, found a sore spot. Interesting. It's one of the things I love about this set is that you get to spend time connecting with your whole body, finding out what's going on, checking in. Oh, how is this over here? Oh, did this get better? oh, is this tight for some reason? I don't know what I did to this spot, but apparently my body's not happy about it. So I will take some time to open it up. And this quality and skill of listening, in Chinese we call it téng. It's this very broad idea of learning to listen, learning to be quiet enough to pay attention to listen. So certain skills have to be in place to be able to listen. You have to be quiet enough inside so you're not overwhelming everything in the world with your own noise. Your mind has to be present enough, sensitive enough to notice things. Your body mind does. So as you listen to your body, exploring how you feel, what's going on, you have to be willing to listen to what's there. So for those of you who watch my studying videos and practice videos, I'm constantly purposefully pausing to ask myself, do I want to continue? How am I feeling? What's going on? Even if what I want to do is to have a nice long study session, I still need to be able to pause to find out what's going on inside. And just that quality of listening by itself is nourishing, and it's good for my practice. Because if I don't check in, then what ends up building up is something that actually disrupts my practice. So please do constantly check in to see how you're doing through practices like this and just during the day. So as you create these movements, are you able to listen to your body, to feel where you're gripping, if you're softening and lengthening? So this whole process here is a releasing of your spine, softening of your neck, a releasing of the tissues back here, a softening of your lower back and your hips. Your arms are released so that you're not holding anything. There's no momentum. You're just softening around, softening through. Then, sometimes even more difficult, is if you notice that you're hardening yourself, you're trying to force things, maybe you have some desire to touch your toes or something like that. And so you're actually not letting yourself soften, even though you can feel that you're not softening. That's another issue. You have to then listen to why. What is it about you that is not okay enough to just let yourself be where you're at? And we had a question about how to do physically challenging practices in a way that's not harmful. And I would say that it's true for any kind of challenging task, whether it's physical or mental or anything else. It requires this ability to listen. Because if I do something and it's harming me, how am I going to know if it's harming me or not? If I can't listen to my own experience, then there's no way for me to stop. Adjust myself so I can see Mel. You take the time to settle. Once you feel that your awareness has gathered in this space down below, you can, of course, feel free to lay down again. But wait for this consolidation process to happen through your body. One step and then the next. You can just take a minute or two to lay flat and let your body release your awareness to spread out through your whole body, especially this layer that we've been working on. at some point, if you'd like, you can come back into a seated position. Allow your awareness to spread out around your body again. Just coming back into a neutral, comfortable position, letting everything settle. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you joining me for my practice. And so to continue with that response I was giving about whether or not you can do practices that are difficult without injuring yourself, the first thing you have to know is how to listen well enough to know when you are injuring yourself. Because you could even do simple practices like we were doing here on the ground. And if you're not listening, you can injure yourself very easily. And there's various kinds of injury. You can push too hard at the gym. You're lifting weights. We were talking about squats the other day. Lots of people hurt themselves when doing things like that because they're busily not listening to their body. And so they can tear muscles, they can injure their joints, they can wear themselves down. Maybe they're exhausted, but they went anyway. That's a kind of violence and a damage to their system. As I was saying before, people can go and do these things and they grow tight, but they don't know how to soften again. So all they do is add more and more tension to their system. That's a kind of aggression and violence they're putting into the system that they haven't learned how to undo. Not because necessarily it's bad to practice exercise, but they have to be able to heal then from their exercise afterward. This is true for people that never rest or don't eat well enough. So they go and do all this damage at the gym, but then they're unable to repair it afterward. And so that's a kind of damage, which doesn't say anything bad about going for a jog at the park. But if they're not listening and they're not healing, then suddenly it's damaging for them. And so there's all kinds of levels of possibility available for our minds and our bodies. But we have to learn how to heal the damage we do, heal any challenges or stress that we've created. And the only way we can know to do that is we develop that skill of listening enough to find how to find our way back toward health and balance again. And that by itself is a really important skill that people rarely seem to cultivate because we're more interested in challenging and trying to get things to happen the way we imagine we want them to without ever learning what it requires in order to heal and to find a way to grow instead of just push themselves. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, and thank you, Steph. Nice to have you here. Del, thank you for coming. Yeah, if there's any other questions, I'll wait just a minute. Yeah, and other kinds of damage that we do to our system, sometimes it's just, let's say, again, just to talk about going to the gym, because we were talking about physically challenging tasks. How many people go to the gym because they are filled with self-hatred about how they look or how they seem? And so they go to the gym, and what they're doing is they're pushing the self-hatred button. They are being motivated through vanity, through insecurity, through these things. And so what they're doing as they go there and to try to solve the problem of how they feel is all they do is enrich that particular process in their body mind of not feeling good enough about themselves. And so even if they go and they do something that is otherwise very nourishing, what they have done is damaged themselves because of how they approached it, the context within which they approached that practice turned it from being something that was otherwise good into something that actually made them feel worse overall. And so we want to have our whole body mind approaching the world as best we can with a healing context. That's how we grow. Otherwise, it's that spoiled milk as you bake a cake. You can still ruin something because of the ingredients being wrong. Yeah, I heard that he died Del is mentioning that the very famous anime creator died recently. He was very inspiring for a lot of people.
The creator of Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, Akira Toriyama. People are talking about it a lot.
Yeah.
Very interesting cat in general. I was never a fan of the show. I do like the inspiration, the Monkey King inspiration, a lot of the fun, traditional Japanese, the world that it's created in, with the various gods and fun creatures. But I never enjoyed it. But I appreciate that he was out there creating something that was so epic for so many people. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your practice. I'll see you back tomorrow. Continue finding in your own life ways to create the appropriate context. Make sure you're approaching things through release and through a kind of kindness and friendliness, self-love, through making choices that are nourishing. In any moment, you have the opportunity to choose the thing that is nourishing and the thing that is destructive. And so always, if you can, be present enough to make the choice that makes you feel better instead of the one that slowly tears you apart. It seems like a simple choice, but of course it's something that can be difficult. But the more we do it, the better we get at it, and the easier it becomes, like everything else, until our whole world is lifted up by those choices we make.